This blame game over the collapsed China spy trial churns on and on and on, but I suspect what a lot of people want to know is, could it happen again? Because if we still can't decide if China is an enemy or not, then probably we still couldn't prosecute somebody that we suspected of spying for them.
Look, I think it's well known within government that, and certainly when I was there, that there are lots of different views about China. So the Treasury tends to be slightly more pro-China because they're thinking about investment, they're thinking about economic opportunity. And defence and maybe the Foreign Office is probably slightly more sceptical. So each of the departments will have a different view. And the Prime Minister or the people around him or her have to take a view of where the government is. And our position on China has changed so much in the last 10 years. I mean, I remember seeing those pictures of President Xi drinking beer, pretending that he liked beer with David Cameron, and he clearly loathed the stuff. But you see the pictures and he's smiling. Yeah. And then, a few years afterwards, we were very hostile to China. So it's a very difficult relationship, and different departments, different ministers will have a different view. Happen
if, let's just say, we had a headline in the lunchtime news today saying 2 people who'd been arrested and were going to be charged or had been charged with spying for Beijing. Would they be prosecuted?
Well, I think you've hit the nail on the head, and Kwasi has as well. We have such a kind of contested relationship with China, and the point you made about the pub is so right. That pub was called the Plough. Do you remember it was a state visit?
Yeah.
And that was in 2015, and then in 2016 that pub was bought for an undisclosed sum by Chinese investors, right? So that is like a fable. And when you look, British Steel was owned by the Chinese Jingji. So much of our critical infrastructure has got Chinese investment. And look, the reality is there is a duality. On the one hand, it is absolutely right to look at the real, I think, threat that China does pose to our national security. On the other hand, I've been to business conferences with, the Chancellor of the day, where businessmen and women will put their hand up and say, well, hang on a minute, just be careful here, because this economy is really struggling and we're trying to get inward investment and we are all we're looking to these Chinese investors.
And it's one of the jobs I did was, education. Well, I wasn't education secretary, but in business, a secretary. You see universities, you see, professors, and they say the engineering departments in this country, lots of them have, very many Chinese graduates.
And they charge them a fortune.
They charge them a fortune. They make money from them, and they're hard-working and good students. And what do you say to them? Do you say, well, you can't come to a British university because you're Chinese?
Well,
is that where we're going to...
No, you don't.
You couldn't do that.
You don't. I mean, Richard...
So it's a difficult relationship to balance.
Richard's questioning, I wonder if that's, as it was explained to me, the reason why the case was thrown out and the reason why it might be different if someone is arrested now is because of the definition of spying. So there was a new definition under relating to some Bavarian arrests, weren't they, that were accused of it, and they redefined what spying was. So the reason why this didn't work, it was explained to me, is a little bit like if you were, I don't know, we're going to be talking about speeding later, but driving a car at 40 miles an hour because the road was a 40-mile-an-hour limit, and then and the time of the offence, you were legal, but then later it becomes illegal. So that shifting definition, is that because we're trying to balance a relationship that's really fruitful and also challenging? Because don't people, in a way, just sort of assume that countries spy on each other? Hasn't that been a decades-old thing?
China,
an industrial situation. A lot of financial institutions force you to leave your phone as you go in, your personal phone if you're a banker, in a lead box because they don't want people listening. So isn't that sort of always known?
I think that's always in the background. And the assumption, if you're a minister or an official, is to be, very careful when you visit a country, perhaps like China, about what they're going to do with the phone. That's just something that one takes for granted. And it doesn't surprise me that I don't know the evidence of what Cummings is saying, but what he says does have a ring.
Well, you can see it shocked him and Boris Johnson.
Just quickly, let's clarify what he is saying. According to the Daily Mail and other papers, he is saying, Dominic Cummings is saying this morning, that the Chinese were allowed to buy a company here that controlled a data hub used by the government departments to exchange extremely sensitive information. And that gave them access to all the top secret emails that were bouncing around between departments. They had access to it for years, he said, and it was covered up.
OK, well, the only thing I'd just say on that is, look, if that's the case, then it's been investigated fully. Dominic Cumming is not known to be the most trusted of narrators. Like, just let's be honest about this. And also, if this was happening while he was a leading government advisor, they should have been put into the public domain. But I think to the germane point, I think what's happening now, and I get it, it's turned into political row, but I think the really important thing going forward is that there is a proper debate. I'd like there to be a cross-party debate, actually, to define what should our relationship be with China, because clearly there are threats, espionage, national security.
Sure.
I would also say not just from China. This case with Nathan Gill, the ex-reform leader in Wales, where he's actually admitted to bribery and asking questions in Parliament on behalf of the Russians, who are, there's no ambiguity, the Russians are absolutely enemy number one at the moment, and that's a settled position. So I think all across our politics, I think there should be an open, honest discussion about the threat level.
Is that realistic, though? Because one of the things he says is, and this is not a phrase that I'd be familiar with, but I presume both of you are, that some of the information included strap material, and apparently strap is code for the most highly classified material. And then there began a debate about whether revealing it or prosecuting it or going further would actually reveal more secrets or not. Isn't that the game of international espionage and international relations?
It is, and also you've got a point. You know, if you say actually there's been this very breach, that basically tells the world that you're not actually looking after your data.
Which is not a great advert.
Which is not a great advert.
Well, look at the Afghan leak we had recently, right? You know, whenever you kind of reveal things about this, and of course you pull a thread. But what's really important is if you are a parliamentarian of any level, or you work as an advisor to a parliamentarian, you are susceptible to be targeted by... And, you know, when I first joined Downing Street as an advisor, one of the first meetings I had was with the security people, and they said, be really, really careful when you're on the phone. If you're in a pub around Westminster, what you probably had the same
also,
chats
you know,
as well.
if
you have to be... And actually, we've just had fresh security advice given to all peers and MPs saying, be very careful of suspicious activity. Now, there's quite a lot of humour in this, because they were also saying, beware of weird social interactions and overt flattery. And I was thinking, do you know anything about how Westminster works? Kind of, you know, like, guys, read the room kind of thing. Well, you know, that is...
If you asked an ordinary person on the street, you know, you're there as business secretary back in the day, or a business minister back in the day, you know, they're like, are you worried about China spying on us? Well, we assume that's happening. Would you rather that we got a great trade deal and attacked our cost of living crisis and made our lives better? I wonder if people would say, actually, just give me more money in my pocket.
Well, listen,
that is the central question.
Exactly. Look at the lessons from history. I mean, this country was trading and dealing with Nazi Germany right up until the day that the war broke out.
But that didn't end well, though, did it? That did not end well.
No, but it shows that you still treat with what is clearly your enemy. The West is still...
Well, we're not at war with China.
We're
not at war with China. So, I mean, your point is exactly right. You know, businesses are trading with China, exchange students, lots of Chinese people coming to study in British universities. You can't suddenly just put a stop to it.
So what do we do then?
Also,
do we just accept it's going to happen and be cautious?
Well, I think the other point to make as well, and I have picked up a bit on this, particularly from higher education institutes, and it's the same whether it's Russian people or people from wherever, all Chinese people are not bad people and spies. I think that's really, really important, because I have heard, like, some people being really, really quite derogatory about Chinese business people and students, and that's really unfair. You know,
of course
there is kind of
racism.
Absolutely, and there is a bit of that.
The point that we're not talking about is the fact that, which I'm interested in, is why was this case stopped? Because my sense is that somebody somewhere was leaned on to stop.
That is everybody's suspicion.
That's the suspicion, and that's where...
And why would they be left on? Because it would reveal more than...
For all the reasons we're discussing.
Or it would unravel something more dangerous?
You know, it could have been... I mean, I'm just speculating. I don't know.
But somebody... to keep China sweet.
Yeah, somebody could have had a word with someone from the embassy, and they would have...
Can we change the record now?
Yeah.
The Chancellor, Reeves, is in America, and she was asked by a journalist there yesterday if she was going to tax the rich in her budget, and she said, it's part of the story.
Yeah.
It's part of the story, which is, in any language, yes.
Yes.
So we are looking at tax rises, aren't we?
That's right. Look, we've been talking about this for months, and we've seen, you know, what the figures are. And many of us were saying, because there was a tax rise hike last year, 40 billion.
Yep.
And the consequence of that, people said, you know, people like me were saying, well, growth is going to lower and they might have to come back for more taxes. And I think that's where we are now. My worry about this is that this isn't the end of the cycle, that if the same thing happens next year, she'll need to increase taxes even more.
So what's the point of the manifesto, saying that you won't?
Well, I personally think that the Labour Party boxed themselves in too tightly ahead of the general election because, and Kwasi will know this better than anybody, when it comes to tax raising, if you want to raise a big amount of revenue, the big three are the ones. That is the cleanest, easiest from an administrative point of view and politically how to do it. So personally, I think the Labour Party did box itself in too tightly, particularly given that we are in a climate where, you know, international headwinds can kind of knock us off course and things like that.
But they still did it. They still promised it.
No, they did. I mean, look, I think they are going to. I think they are going to have to come back and look. I don't know what's going to happen, but clearly they are pitch rolling, and we've heard a couple of arguments. Look, to be fair, the world has changed from a security point of view. Defence spending is having to go up. They're also now saying, and I'm glad they're saying this because it's true, one of the reasons this country is poor, and it feeds into the China conversation we were just having, is because of Brexit as well. And they are going to start talking about that more. But this is going to be very difficult.
What does tax the rich actually mean?
So there are lots of things they could look at. I mean, one way of doing it is increasing income tax for higher earners.
So they've sworn they won't do.
Which they've said they won't do. The other thing that Neil Kinnock actually talked about in the summer was a wealth tax. So that means that if you have, let's say, anything above £10 million, which is a huge amount of money...
What, in terms of capital? Or?
Capital.
Yeah.
Capital assets. They will tax up to 2%, I think, was the number he mentioned, a year. And he thinks that can raise £10 billion. Now, the danger with that, and someone like me would argue this, is that you're just going to cause capital flight. People are going to leave the country. It's not like the 70s, when you couldn't work from home, there was no internet, and people were much more static. They couldn't move as easily. Today's economy, rich people can go anywhere. And the worry, if you put in an asset tax, a wealth tax, is that they'll just simply leave the country.
I mean, that is an argument that is, you know, is made, and I'm not totally sort of dismissing it, but also that I'm slightly questioning of it because a lot of people come to this country not just because of a transactional, I'm coming here because of the tax code. They come here because this country is a brilliant country. It's got loads to offer. We've just talked about our great universities, our great education, our culture. You know, this is a great country to live in. And I do feel that, you know, if you are somebody who enjoys living in Britain and you are lucky enough to earn that sort of wealth, you should
Not everyone will leave.
You should pay your fair share.
Not everyone will leave, but you look at somewhere like Milan in Italy. Property prices there have gone up 50% in the last 5 years. And that's not because the Italian weather's got better. That's because of their tax regime, which is attracting people, mobile people, wealthy people, to come and live there. And that's a real risk in today's world. I'm not talking about 30 or 40 years ago. In today's world, people can live pretty much anywhere and still do their job at that level.
Look, I hear that argument a lot, but I also think taking a step back, look at it from a kind of general fairness point of view. If you are an average person on an average wage, if your family income is, let's say, £50,000 a year, you're really, really struggling, you're paying more taxes than ever before. It does feel inherently unfair that somebody who's super wealthy might have all been able to organise their finances so they're paying a much lower level of tax. That just feels inherently unfair to a lot of people.
I mean, my issue with the tax... I think Aisha makes a fair point, but my issue with the tax rises is that if you raise taxes, super, super wealthy people will find ways of getting around it. The people that are staying here are generally the middle classes. And I think politically that's going to be very difficult for the government. You know, at the beginning, they thought they had all those pledges, they weren't going to put up tax. And what happened was that they looked at different groups, like, you know, the winter fuel payment, that was for pensioners, obviously VAT on school fees, obviously, you know, inheritance tax on farms. And there were different groups that they were targeting. And I think politically that was a disaster. So what they're looking at now, potentially, is raising... I think they might raise things like VAT.
Right. Isn't one of the arguments that when you were Chancellor and with Liz Truss that cutting tax promotes growth?
That was our central...
That was your central point. So why would they not look at that then?
So the problem is...
Because of the mini budget was a disaster.
I know it was a disaster.
But that was the idea, because it was all done at once.
As a concept for them that they say it's all about growth. Labour Party has said since it came into government and before, it's all about growth. What people don't understand is what is actually happening in terms of delivering that.
Well,
and tax cuts,
disastrous
as it was
Kate,
one
that
argument.
was a really, really good example. And, you know, you've spoken about this before. You can't just do radical tax cuts without doing pretty big spending constraints at the same time as well.
Right.
And the problem with your budget is you were trying to sort of do both, right? And you have to prepare the markets. And also...
But at this point, what the Labour government looks like is doing both in the opposite
hang on.
way.
The only thing that I'm not saying the
economy
economy is doing brilliant, but the IMF just said that Britain is going to look like it has the second fastest growing economy. And I'm not saying the economy is all rosy because inflation is going up as well.
That's right.
But growth, I think what we have learned is for a long time now, Kwasi's era, the era we're in now, growth is not a silver bullet. Growth takes a lot of time. It's about solving our productivity puzzle. It's about regional development. It's about skills. Trying to solve the productivity growth puzzle is not as simple as just tax cuts.
I'm going to make a confession now. Not a big deal, but whatever.
We're all poised.
I've got 6 points on my driving licence, both because of speed cameras. One for doing 34 on a dual carriageway at 4:30 in the morning when it was a 30, and I didn't realise, I thought it was a 40, but I was still doing 34, so it's 4 miles over the limit. And one for doing 24 in a 20 at 4:30 in the morning. And I have to say, I didn't sort of mind being fined, because, yes, I had broken the limit inadvertently, but to get 3 points on the licence as well seemed a bit harsh. And I only say this because Co-op Insurance has done a survey, and they've announced the results this morning. A surge in drivers being caught by speed cameras. Huge, huge rise. 12% increase in the number of penalty points added to licences last year, which, of course, if you get to 12, means you lose your licence. Are we... Of course, speeding has to be controlled. Are we over-penalising drivers for relatively minor infractions?
So
I'm
look,
not sure.
my view on this is, you know, when those 20-mile-an-hour speed limits are almost impossible. You've got to drive you've got to be very, very careful.
I set my cruise control.
Yeah, and so you know,
I say that's such a Richard Mates thing.
It may be a Richard Madeley thing to say, but actually it protects me from getting more points.
Of course.
I mean,
Get the driving gloves on.
Wear a driving cap, absolutely.
Yourself in that moment. And believe me, I know about caricatures. I want to.
But I think you were unlucky with the 24 mile, because it's very difficult to keep to that, and you know they're going to come down hard on that, and you could say, well, you know, this is too strict. But if they've got rules, they've got to enforce them. I mean, that's always been my view generally.
But points?
Yeah. Because it will discourage you. I mean, we're talking about it now.
Does it
if it just been a slip on the wrist,
money?
you would.
I mean, if it's that much
so that's always
who's getting
that's always
that
a
money?
suspicion.
Is it the Treasury?
Rachel Reeves is getting that money.
Rachel Reeves. So maybe this is one option.
Maybe this is a way to plug the gap.
2 miles an hour. We'll all have points and fines.
I mean, I can't comment this because I'm such a bad driver. I took myself off the road deliberately.
Did you?
Yeah, because I'm such a bad driver, so I just thought it was better for everybody.
I don't know if I'm a good driver, but I'm a very slow driver. It won't surprise you to know. I'm one of those ones that should be wearing a hat
fines, no.
and leaning over the steering wheel as I go along. So I haven't got any points.
Now then, Angela Rayner, it has emerged, was given a £17,000, £17,000 golden payoff when she lost her job, basically, because of the, well, let's not go through all the scandals again. Is that right? A lot of people...
You got one, didn't you?
I did. I did. So I was Chancellor for however many days it was, and I got the £17,000.
I think you got 17,876.
Was that what it was? I just remember
you got an extra 876.
I don't know what
into his bank account.
So, but of course, I'd been in the cabinet for 2 years before that.
Yeah.
So you could say, well, that was because you'd done that role.
Right.
I think, and I'd been sacked, so I'd been dismissed. But then when people leave and there's a bit of a cloud in terms of conduct, it does say serious conduct.
Yes.
And then, of course, that raises the question, what is serious misconduct, as it were?
Well, our viewers are saying, almost universally, well, if I got the sack, I wouldn't expect a golden payoff. I'd get the sack, I'd get my last paycheck.
You might get redundancy money. I mean,
that's something different. If you're made redundant, that's because the firm has taken a decision to reorganise or whatever.
But losing your job because you've screwed up. Why should you be rewarded for that?
You wouldn't get money for that in the real world.
Yeah, I get that. And I can see, you know, especially when they have a short time. I mean, she was in the job for, what, a year and a half, maybe? I can see there's a big pushback. And I think they're changing the rules.
Well, they are changing. I mean, if that they've just changed the rules, so I think she just kind of came in under.
Because the government did say, Labour government did say that they wouldn't do that. You know, because to be fair, there were a lot of people losing their jobs in the period that you did. So there were a lot of 17,000
you know, I remember with Theresa
out.
May, you know, there was a minister leaving every month, every single month for 3 years. There were 40 ministers that left the government. And, of course, you know, every time they were being paid out.
But, look, I mean, I think it's not a good look, and I think the point stands, and I think your listeners are correct. I think if you hold high office, you're in incredibly privileged positions. You're making the rules affecting, you know, millions of people's lives. You're in a very privileged position. You have to abide by a higher code. There's a ministerial code. So I think if you do breach, you shouldn't get your payoffs.
I think breach is different. If you're sacked in a reshuffle... I think you probably would.
Yeah, I think that's true. I think that's slightly different. If you've done a good job, but fair enough, your face
didn't fit, or the different people
I think if you have done something wrong, you shouldn't get the money. But I think, to be fair, the rules have just changed.
Well, let's give Angela Rayner the right to reply. A spokesperson for Angela Rayner said, I quote, "There is a world of difference between making an honest mistake and a severe breach of the Ministerial Code. And as the independent ethics advisor's investigation concluded, Angela acted with integrity and with a dedicated and exemplary commitment to public service." Anyway, we'll be debating this later on in the programme. What about these ankle tags for persistent shoplifters? So that if they return to the stores that they have habitually been stealing stuff from, an alarm goes off at the local nick, and they allegedly will send a cop down.
I think this is really good. I think this is really, really good. Shoplifting is an absolute scourge on our society. It is blighting local communities. You know, I just know from my own experience and where I live in Brixton, absolutely horrific. In fact, I took the police minister to see and meet with local shop workers in Brixton. You know, and this is happening all over the country. Shop workers feel like they're going into a war zone a lot of the time. So I think anything technology like this in terms of tagging, facial recognition technology is something that's been used a lot more. I think anything to help shops, shopkeepers and the police stop this scourge is a good thing.
So my view has always been, if you've got the technology now, why wouldn't we use it?
Absolutely.
You know, if we've got... I mean, you know, years ago, we didn't have it, so it didn't happen.
Well, there are two questions. We'll be discussing this again later in the programme. There are two questions, actually, that arise from this. All right, we accept the principle's a good one. One, are the police actually monitoring a screen somewhere, waiting for an alarm to go off? And if they are, do they have the manpower to send someone down? And secondly, what's to stop the person who's been tagged just going into shops that they're not banned from?
Well, I mean, look, hopefully, by doing this technology, they will sort of pick people up and try and kind of sort of deal with them. And look, to be fair, there's some persistent shoplifters, which is to do with organised crime, and actually there's a lot of violence against shop workers by these shoplifters, so it's not like innocent people. There are some shoplifters who have got addiction issues, mental health issues. Ideally, if you could try and get them help so they'd stop doing it, but,